Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: China's army dwarfs Taiwan's. Could 3.3 million civilian warriors give it a fighting chance? The shakeup in China's rocket force continues. Putting the democratic crisis into perspective. Xi-Biden letters spell out global importance of improving relations. America plans an assault breaker Taiwan drone swarm. There's just one problem. China's army dwarfs Taiwan's. Could 3.3 million civilian warriors give it a fighting chance? ABC. Amid increasing tensions between Taiwan and China, some Taiwanese citizens are taking matters into their own hands and enrolling in civil defense courses to prepare for the possibility of an invasion or blockade. Many participants are women and young parents who are concerned about how to protect their families in the event of a crisis. The courses, offered by the Kuma Academy, teach practical skills such as first aid and how to prepare a home for evacuation. The demand for these courses has skyrocketed in the past 15 months as citizens become more wary of a potential escalation by China. The shakeup in China's rocket force continues. Diplomat. China's aerospace sector is facing increasing corruption probes, with top officials being removed from their positions. The purges began with the resignation of former Rocket Force Commander Wei Fenghe in March 2023, and have since expanded to include officials from the People's Liberation Army and the Chinese Communist Party. The replacements for the ousted officials suggest a more aggressive strategic posture for the PLA in the near future. Among those removed from their positions are senior military officials and defense industry executives. The replacements chosen by President Xi Jinping are seen as loyal to him and supportive of his aggressive foreign policies. The purges and replacements indicate Xi's dissatisfaction with technocrats in his administration and his desire to replace them with commanders who can help him achieve his goals in the Indo-Pacific region. Putting the democratic crisis into perspective. Financial Times. The number of democracies in the world, the quality of democracy within them, and the share of humankind that lives under democratic rule have all declined in the past decade. However, viewed in a larger historical context, the decline is more like a correction after the peak of democratic expansion in the aftermath of the Cold War. Despite the decline, the world is still much freer than it was in the mid-20th century. The autocratic world is nowhere near reversing the losses it suffered in the second half of the 20th century. Xi-Biden letters spell out global importance of improving relations. SCMP opinion. The exchange of letters between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden marks a critical reset of China-U.S. diplomatic relations, which had hit a low point. The letters reflect progress in restoring relations, with talks resuming between military leaders and positive signs for the stabilization of ties. The letters also highlight the importance of maintaining dialogue and cooperation between the two countries, particularly in the context of economically and strategically turbulent global situations. China is hoping that the U.S. will change its attitude and not try to contain China's peaceful rise. America plans an assault breaker Taiwan drone swarm. There's just one problem. Telegraph. U.S. military planners are considering the use of drones to counter any Chinese invasion of Taiwan, according to David Axe in Forbes. In order to defeat an assault, the U.S. would need to strike 1,000 targets within 24 hours of the Chinese attack beginning. The U.S. Assault Breaker 2 initiative is investigating the development of thousands of drones which would be positioned around Taiwan, capable of targeting Chinese vessels and aircraft. However, the U.S. currently lacks the necessary numbers of inexpensive drones, and only plans to start the acquisition process in 2024. Hong Kong, media tycoon Jimmy Lai pleads not guilty. Deutsche Welle. Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai has pleaded not guilty to charges under the city's national security law. Lai, a critic of China, faces 2 charges of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 charge of conspiracy to publish seditious publications. The trial is being closely watched by Western powers, who view it as a test of Hong Kong's judicial independence and freedoms under the national security law. Both the UK and the US have called for Lai's immediate release and described the trial as politically motivated. Hong Kong authorities insist that Lai will receive a fair trial. After war and economic turmoil dominated in 2023, what does 2024 have in store? South China Morning Post. The South China Morning Post has released its predictions for 2024, forecasting a year of economic recovery and geopolitical challenges. The article highlights the need for China to restart its economic growth engine following a slowdown in 2023. The author suggests that all eyes will be on China's legislative meetings in March, where Premier Li Qiang is expected to outline the government's strategies for getting growth back on track. In addition, the article notes the importance of the presidential elections in Taiwan and the US, which will determine the future of US-China relations. The piece also provides insight into what can be expected in Hong Kong in 2024, including the sedition trial of media owner Jimmy Lai Ching, Hong Kong's own version of the national security law, and the potential for interest rate cuts. The article concludes by highlighting various events and milestones that will take place in Hong Kong throughout the year, such as the Standard Chartered Hong Kong Marathon and the Art Basel Hong Kong exhibition. China's advanced machine tool exports to Russia soar after Ukraine invasion. Financial Times. Chinese shipments of high-precision computer numerical control (CNC) machine tools to Russia have increased tenfold since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, according to Russian customs returns. The soaring shipments of CNC units, which allow for extremely precise metal milling, have raised concerns among Ukraine's allies who seek to limit Russia's access to the equipment. Chinese producers shipped $68 million worth of CNC tools to Russia in July, up from just $6.5 million in February 2022. Russian imports of CNC tools from the EU, historically its main source, have dramatically fallen as restrictions have tightened. Chinese-origin CNC devices made up 57% of Russian imports by value in July, up from 12% before the war. The US has imposed sweeping sanctions on all significant Russian importers of CNC tools, including some that had moved less than $200,000 of equipment since the invasion. We don't really want an innovative public service. Who delivers services the best? Plus other letters to the editor for January 2. The Globe and Mail. In a series of letters to the editor published in the Globe and Mail, readers discuss the merits of private versus public sector management. One reader suggests that the private sector generally does a better job at running things, citing examples such as the federal government's Phoenix Pay system, developed by IBM, and Toronto's problems with Metrolinx. Another reader highlights how Ontario's Conservative government, which supports the private sector, is legislating to allow wine coolers to be sold in corner stores, potentially leading to underage drinking. The reader also criticizes the government's decision to replace nonprofit home care providers with private companies that will monitor their own performance. Another reader argues against an outright ban on cigarette sales, suggesting that prohibition has been ineffective in the past, leading to dangerous and unregulated black market supplies of substances. The reader advocates for a multifaceted approach to tackling substance use and harm. The problem with de-risking. Foreign affairs. Western leaders have recognized the need to de-risk global supply chains linked to China, including in the clean energy sector. However, the difficulty of successfully de-risking with respect to China has not been adequately understood or communicated. Western governments have primarily relied on subsidies and financial support to stimulate domestic manufacturing, but this strategy is not sustainable and could lead to a subsidy war and wasteful spending. Instead, Western governments should clarify which sectors they must absolutely support to reduce reliance on China for national security reasons and carefully consider how to compete with China on costs. They should focus on priority areas and push customers to support Western supply chains. China's dominance in clean energy technologies is a key concern for the West. China leads in production, deployment, and innovation in the clean energy sector. The West must focus on priority areas where it relies excessively on China and sectors in which it can realistically compete. Simply subsidizing the cost difference or banning Chinese imports will not be effective. Instead, low-cost, scalable, and sustainable innovations in mining, processing, and manufacturing must be supported by customers and the market. The West must also address the tension between what is good for the planet and what is good for business, as lower prices for clean energy technologies reduce margins for producers. The West has squandered its early lead in clean energy technologies and helped China get started in the sector. China's dominance in critical minerals and clean energy manufacturing makes meaningful decoupling difficult. China's excess capacity and investment in clean energy supply chains put pressure on prices and make it hard for Western companies to compete. Western companies must decide whether to buy cheaper materials from China or bet on new Western plants with unproven results. Western companies have some advantages, such as access to hydropower and more environmentally sustainable manufacturing processes. Governments can use industrial policy to enable their markets to pay slightly more for a more sustainable supply chain and lower the cost of capital for clean energy companies. However, Western governments must also consider voter backlash and the costs of incentivizing a shift toward clean energy. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trusty guide to the happenings in the 6 degrees world. Today, we explored a variety of news stories, from Taiwan's citizens preparing for a potential invasion to China's purges in its aerospace sector. We also delved into the state of democracy worldwide, the reset in China-US relations, and the US plans for a drone swarm to counter a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Additionally, we looked at the trial of media tycoon Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, the predictions for 2024, China's exports of advanced machine tools to Russia, and the debate between private and public sector management. Now, let's dive into some analysis. It's no secret that tensions between Taiwan and China have been escalating, and it's fascinating to see how Taiwanese citizens are taking matters into their own hands by enrolling in civil defense courses. This highlights the concern among the population and their determination to protect their families and homes in case of a crisis. It's a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of the Taiwanese people. In China, the purges in the aerospace sector are raising eyebrows. The replacements chosen by President Xi Jinping suggest a more aggressive strategic posture for the People's Liberation Army. It seems that Xi is dissatisfied with the technocrats in his administration and is looking for commanders who can help him achieve his goals in the Indo-Pacific region. This shakeup could have far-reaching implications for China's military and foreign policies. Turning to the global democratic crisis, while it's disheartening to see a decline in the number of democracies and the quality of democracy, it's important to keep things in perspective. The world is still much freer than it was in the mid-20th century, and the autocratic world is nowhere near reversing the losses it suffered in the second half of the 20th century. We must remain vigilant in defending and promoting democratic values, but let's not lose sight of the progress we have made. The exchange of letters between President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden signals a critical reset in China-US diplomatic relations. Talks have resumed between military leaders, and there are positive signs for the stabilization of ties. It's crucial that dialogue and cooperation are maintained between the two countries, especially given the economically and strategically turbulent global situations we find ourselves in. China is hoping for a change in the US attitude and for a recognition of its peaceful rise. Now, let's talk about the US plans for a drone swarm to counter a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. While it sounds like a sci-fi movie plot, it's a serious consideration by US military planners. However, there is a slight hitch: the US currently lacks the necessary numbers of inexpensive drones, and the acquisition process won't start until 2024. So, it seems we'll have to wait a little longer before we see this futuristic defense strategy in action. In Hong Kong, media mogul Jimmy Lai's trial is being closely watched by Western powers. They view it as a test of Hong Kong's judicial independence and freedoms under the national security law. The UK and the US have called for Lai's immediate release, while Hong Kong authorities insist that he will receive a fair trial. The outcome of this trial could have implications for the future of Hong Kong's autonomy and freedoms. Looking ahead to 2024, the South China Morning Post has released its predictions, highlighting the need for China to restart its economic growth engine and the importance of the presidential elections in Taiwan and the US. The article also provides insights into Hong Kong's upcoming events and milestones. It's shaping up to be an eventful year, and we'll be keeping a close eye on these developments. Lastly, we explored China's increasing exports of advanced machine tools to Russia, raising concerns among Ukraine's allies who seek to limit Russia's access to such equipment. Chinese producers have significantly increased their shipments since the Ukraine invasion, while imports from the EU have dramatically fallen. This highlights the challenges faced by Ukraine's allies in countering Russia's aggression and the need for strategic coordination. Now, my dear viewers, it's time to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these news stories? Do you have any questions or opinions you'd like to share? Let's keep the discussion going and delve deeper into the fascinating world of international affairs. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.